Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 24. What in the history? As always, I come to you as Dan Brady.
I will come to you as Johnny Smith.
Uh, hey, man, how are you?
You know me, Dan. Grind until they put dirt on my body. How about yourself?
Trying to keep my head above the water, sir. I didn't have a very good night's sleep last night, and then I accidentally slept about 8 hours today.
Oh, there you go. It all evens out, and one day you'll die, and you'll never have to worry about insomnia again.
That's the dream. Like my joke says, the big sleep is what I'm aiming for. When I get there, leave me alone.
Man, the big sleep. You know, we gotta enjoy death because we enjoy like sleep so much, and that's like almost death.
You're
It's like it's
yeah.
like here's the trial period for death. If you want to subscribe, sign up.
Oh man. Oh, is that why I have insomnia? My free trial ran up.
Yeah, man, you got to renew
Oh damn.
or upgrade.
Oh man. What's the upgrade from insomnia? Full blown just caffeinated crime spree?
It's Kramer.
I can't say the N word, dude. I value a future career.
Oh, when I said Kramer, I did, and you just said that, I didn't know how they connected for a split second, and I thought, oh my god, what the fuck did I just say?
No, the guy that played him.
Yeah, I know the
yeah.
story. I didn't connect it, and I was like, oh no, what did I just say? Delete this.
You know who for sure didn't say the N word, Johnny?
You're gonna tell me this lady, but there's no proof of that.
I don't think that word existed. Uh, there's probably slang for Roman people, but you know, I don't know what that is. And that's my
Dirty
dog.
Romans.
That's that sound in the background is my dog making the underneath of my bed her home.
All
Uh,
right, I can do racial epithets against white people. So you know what a slur against the Romans are? Guinea,
what?
wop,
That's fair.
all that you fucking dago.
And
Yeah,
now
you dago ass Roman.
we're back to episode 22. Charles Lucky Luciano. Okay, so nearly 2,000 years ago, she was a widowed queen. She was one of the few brave souls, people brave enough to rise in rebellion against the mighty Roman Empire. And they were occupying her homeland. She managed to amass and control an army of over 1,000 ancient Britons, laying waste to several of the nation's occupied towns and cities along the way, including London, before eventually succumbing to the dominance of the Roman Empire in one final huge battle in 61 AD. This episode is going to be the history of the warrior queen Boudicca. We're going to discuss uh, the Roman invasion of Britain, and then we're going to have a discussion on whether or not Boudicca even actually existed.
I couldn't find this terminology anywhere when I was researching her, but I think it would be safe to describe her the same way I describe myself as a bad bitch.
Yes, she very much was. And just like all underdog stories in history, she has a breaking point. And it's a pretty terrible breaking point. And we're going to discuss that here in a little bit. But I really want to kind of set the background for what's going on at this point in history. So we're going to go over a timeline a little bit. All right.
Sounds good, Dan. Let's
Uh,
take a dive.
let's take a dive, sir. Are you coming with me?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. I got paid off already.
Awesome. I'm glad
I'm
that
going down
check
in the
went through.
port.
Good.
Yeah.
So in 5455 BC, Julius Caesar invaded Britain twice, but returns to Gaul without subjugating the island. So basically, the first time he came ashore, he was met with resistance, um, and he just backed off and went to France, or where the Gauls are from. The Gauls were a barbarian people, just like the Celts were at the time. Uh, the Romans in this are the clean cut college kid with the silver spoon, and the Celts and the Gauls are the barbarians. They're the people that those type of people just kind of turn their noses at.
Now, I don't know if you did the research, and if you did, it's just something we are going to fundamentally disagree on. But from here forth, I will call them Celts.
Celts, Celts. Okay. Uh,
But to be fair, when I go to the store, I usually order Keltzer water.
oh, bringing back the puns. So, and from 34 to 25 BC, Augustus plans to invade Britain, but internal disputes. That was a really terrible pun. And British compliance postponed his efforts. So, whenever Britain was just this exotic land. You know, they had corn there, the wool, different types of things that you couldn't find in Europe and the rest of Europe.
If I ever become a comedy parody rapper, my name is going to be Big Puns. Shout out to Terror Squad.
So in 41 AD, Caligula is assassinated. But basically, do you know anything about Caligula?
He was batshit crazy, from what I understand.
Yes, he was. He actually, in 40 AD, he brought his armies to invade Britain, but instead collected seashells instead of launching an invasion. He collected these seashells and went back to Rome as victorious. And of course, everybody was just like, what is going on here?
Put it to this way, Dan. Say you come down to Pittsburgh. You're from Erie.
Yeah.
You come down to Pittsburgh to fight somebody. Somebody's talking shit. But when you get here, you find 3 pounds of weed and you pick it up and you collect it and you say, fuck this fight. You go back to Erie victorious.
Yes. That's
so the man won.
My dog is breathing very heavy into the microphone right now. But Abby, stop. So basically, it was viewed again as being batshit crazy, but also there's another story to this, that his sailors and his soldiers were so afraid to cross the channel that basically he made them collect seashells instead of invading the country, because he felt like they were too cowardice to do so, and making them collect seashells shamed them.
You know what, though? To be fair, on their map, there was probably some sea serpent or kraken right in the channel that they didn't want to deal with.
Right. Yeah. Who knows at this day and time? Kraken. 41 AD, Caligula is assassinated. Claudius becomes emperor. 42 AD, a client king of the Romans is overthrown by Cataruchus and flees to Rome, giving them a pretext for invasion. Now, a client king is basically someone who controls their own kingdom, but they owe it to the Romans.
Okay, so was it like how Cyrus the Great would invade and say, "We rule you, but you can carry on about your business"?
Yes. Yeah.
Very effective tactic when getting more land in your empire.
Exactly. And being able to control the people, but not with an iron fist, you know?
Little tidbit of history, since we're talking about invaders and conquerors and such like that. Genghis Khan, I learned recently, Genghis Khan was actually a title, not his actual name.
Yeah. Yeah, the Khans were. I didn't know about the Genghis part. I think we talked about that last week or a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and it's either, depending on who you talk to, it's either pronounced Genghis or Chenghis.
Huh.
But we are way off with Genghis.
So, in 43 AD, decisive Roman victory at the Battle of Medway this marked the conquest of southern Britain by the Roman Emperor Claudius. In 44 AD, Claudius holds a victory party in Rome. He names his son Britannicus in honor of his victory.
I thought it was going to be after the encyclopedias.
God damn, these puns are terrible this episode. Can I get a new co-host? Anybody?
Have at it, guys. Have at it.
47 AD, the founding of Londinium, which is modern day London, by the Romans. So London is that old. That's over 2,000 years.
cut Dan a break this episode. I did some of the names myself that we have to go over. Horrendous. Horrendous. So if he mispronounces something, just fucking roll with it.
So, thank you. 47 AD, Romans under Publius Asterius defeat a Iceni revolt. Now, I want to stop here and say that not much is really known about this story because, like Cyrus, only certain historians wrote down his legacy. So we don't fully know everything Cyrus did, but, other than what is told through the Roman historians. Okay. So when they defeat the Iceni revolt, Boudicca's husband Prastugus may have been installed as the leader of the Iceni, or he could have been a client king before that. We don't fully know.
Okay. So there's a lot of unknowns here.
So, yes, in 49 AD, Camaldulium becomes a colonia, which is a small settled town.
Dan, be very respectful. That's our vice president's name right now.
Oh, that was good. 51 AD, Cataracus, who led the previous revolt, was captured by the Romans after years of guerrilla warfare when he was betrayed by Cartamadua, the queen of the brigands, but pardoned after an impassioned speech to the Roman Senate. 52 AD, Publius Austrius dies and is replaced by Alice Didius. 54 AD, we have the death and assassination of Claudius, and Nero becomes the emperor.
Okay.
In 58 AD, Suetonius Paulinius appointed governor of Britain. Now, a lot of this isn't going to mean anything to you yet, but we're just kind of setting up the timeline for everything that happens throughout our story.
Yeah, this isn't my first episode. I dig it.
I was letting everybody else know in case there are new listeners.
Hey, new listeners, how are you doing? Took you long enough to catch the fuck on. We got a back catalog. Go listen.
Hey, we're at 1,132 listens.
Nice.
Early 60 AD, Suetonius Paulinius campaigns on Angelici against the headquarters of the Druids, and it's a slaughter. We're going to talk about it here, but the Druids commanded the local civilians to attack the army without any weapons, and I'm going to tell you it doesn't end well.
They had the civilians not have any weapons. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So in 60 AD, we had the death of Boudicca's husband, Prastugus. Romans attempt to see Iceni's tribes, lands, and holding. Boudicca's revolt begins. Late 60 AD, the Iceni and Trivovantes tribes agreed to drive Roman from Britain under Iceni leadership. 61 AD.
Just for perspective, Dan, within the history of the armed forces in the U.S.,
yes,
has there ever been a female leader like this, a female general, a female commander like this?
Not to this level, no. I mean, one of our more famous female military people is Jessica Lynch, and she got a convoy lost in Iraq and got a lot of people killed.
Huh. Okay.
So in 61 AD, the battle, but then again, we're talking about a very different time where women were allowed to do these things. Like they were a lot freer in terms of like women in the military and women leading militaries than we have been for the last 200 years.
Okay, fair enough. I didn't know that that was more prevalent back then.
Oh yeah, like barbarians, like they lived a very different life in terms of like giving women roles and stuff like that. We call them barbarians, but were they really?
Oh, listen to you. Who's the one saying bad jokes now, fucker?
I was trying to make a statement, Johnny.
Mr. Fantastic stretched his arm all the way back to pat himself on the back there.
You get to stand on your soapbox. Why can't I? So the Battle of Calamandrum happened in 61 AD. They sack and destroy the town. And again in 61 AD, Landinium and Verulamium sacked by the Britons. 61 AD, Cactus Decinius flees Britain to Rome to infer Nero of the disaster. 61
You really
AD.
disappointed me.
What?
You really disappointed me. I was hoping Cactus Jack was making an appearance.
Oh,
and was about to
man.
be fucking hardcore.
Bang, bang. I know Cactus Jack. Don't, no. 60. I was just talking about Cactus Jack today. His how great his street fight with Triple H actually happened a year ago, or not a year ago, in 2000. So 22 years ago.
God,
21 years ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
One of the best matches I will ever watch.
Yeah, fair enough. He's had some classic ones, man. I remember some really vicious barbed wire matches.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Japan.
Mick Foley, the things he did to his body to get anywhere in wrestling is amazing, though he is kind of a bully himself. And if y'all want to come at me for that statement, go to Facebook at What in the History Pod, get in our messages, What in the History 814 at Gmail, message us. Tell me that Mick Foley isn't a bully, because even today he had to delete a post off of Facebook for fat shaming somebody.
Huh. Fat shaming to me is, it's a slippery slope that I'm not even going to comment on because I know I'll get myself in trouble.
So, 229 AD, Cassius Dio writes Roman history. And we are going to take a moment to talk about the two guys that have recorded the history of Boudicca. Lucius Cassius Dio was born 155 AD and died 235 AD. So lived a pretty decent life.
Lived an old life too. Holy shit.
He was a Roman statesman and history of Greek and Roman origin. He published over 80 volumes of history on ancient Rome, beginning with the arrival of Aeneas in Italy. The volume documented the subsequent founding of Rome, the formation of the Republic, and the creation of the empire. Written in ancient Greek over a period of 22 years, Dio works cover approximately 1,000 years of history. Many of his 80 books have survived intact or as fragments, providing modern scholars with a detailed perspective on Roman history.
Now, I can't speak on to his level of knowledge or ability, but I don't give a lot of those old historians a lot of credit, because you could just make shit up. Like, oh, the big bird flew across the sky, and that's how we got Sundays.
We are going to talk about it because a lot of the history too needed to be fantasized. Like I sent you how he described Boudicca and how she looked. So, a lot of stuff. Then there's this big speech we're going to talk about, and it's like 3 pages, and it's just like, it's fantastic, it's dramatic, but it probably didn't happen. Yeah, Boudicca probably did give her guys encouragement, but probably not to that extent. Plus, nobody knows exactly what she said,
So this Boudicca lady could potentially just be folklore.
Yes. Yeah,
or an amalgamation of different stories of people.
Right. Or they just needed something to characterize this revolt,
Like an Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Something to look for.
Well, like they needed somebody evil. And what portrays evil barbarians even more than this woman who stepped out of line, and she's just evil and vicious and tall, and they needed a boogeyman.
I prefer a sassy lady myself.
Yeah.
Don't hit me with that boring shit. Give me a little bit of spice. Make me work for it. but
Oh
not
yeah.
now because I'm not interested. So if you get spicy with me now, I don't give a shit. I'll walk away.
And then you know who didn't walk away? Another man by the name of Publius Cornelius Tac- Tactus.
If that
Uh
doesn't sound like a nerd, I don't know what is.
he's known more as Tacticus. Um his single word name, and he was a Roman historian and politician, is considered by modern scholars to be one of the greatest Roman historians. He lived in what has been called the Silver Age of Latin literature and has a reputation for the brevity and compactness of his Latin prose, as well as his penetrating insights into the psychology of power politics. The surviving portions of his two major works, the Annals and the Histories, examine the reigns of the emperors Tiberius, Claudius, Nero, and those who reigned in the year of the four emperors. These two works span the history of the Roman Empire from the death of Augustus to the First Jewish Roman War. There are substantial uh, there's still substantial surviving texts. Um, so you know his histories or his writings have survived the test of time.
Okay, good for him.
Yeah, man. So you know, again, you only have two, and we have to keep in mind with this story that the people involved were Roman. You know,
Okay, so they had incentive to paint her in a more negative light.
right? Of course. Like we're gonna talk about her body count, and the chances are that it was very oh exaggerated. Like they we're going to hear these numbers, and there good chances they did kill a good amount of people, but they have to look evil in the eyes of the Roman Empire. So the early life of Boudicca is not well known. Again, I can't tell you when she was born. I know she's born in the northern region of where modern day Scotland. She's born into the tribe of the Iceni people, and they were a client kingdom of the Romans based in modern northern Norfolk. Her name is said to come from the Celtic word Buda, which means victory. And another thing, there's like 6 different ways to spell Boudica and pronounce Boudica. I'm going with the one that I've seen the most and I've heard the most. She is married to the king of the tribe, Pastugus, and can be assumed to have her privileged upbringing in comparison to the rest of her tribe. Uh, this claim made by Cassius Dio says that Prastugus was lent over 40 million sesterces, which was the gold coin or the coin that the Roman Empire used, or the monetary devices. And they likely gave her and her husband a lifestyle far removed from her countrymen. Shows she's living in a lapse um, of discovery. Now we don't know much of what she looks like, and a lot of it comes from Cassius Dio and how he described Boudica. Um, Johnny, are you ready to read that?
Actually, no, I'm
Okay,
not, Dan.
we didn't.
Um,
That's my fault. We didn't talk about this beforehand.
Let me pull this up. Now I feel like an asshole.
No,
Uh,
don't.
Ready to read that, and then I got to find out what the fuck I'm reading and where it's at.
I can read it right now.
There you go, Dan. You can read it right now. I like that idea.
Okay, so not much again is known about her appearance, and Cassius Steele painted this brooding figure, and so we don't fully know what she looked like, but this is how she is described in Cassius Steele's history. Very tall, in appearance most terrifying, and the glance of her eye most fierce, and her voice was harsh. A great mass of the tawniest hair fell to her hips. Around her neck was a golden necklace, and she wore a tunic of divers colors over which a thick mantle was fastened with a brooch.
What are divers colors?
Bright colors, I'm guessing.
Okay. Okay. You know, there's a lot of it seems like there's a lot of emphasis on her looks. And I don't know, man. Even if she was real, I don't think any of that matters. You know, cuz you don't need to have a look to be a
Well,
badass.
the Romans painted this picture that she's very tall and that she's very menacing. They had to create this again this boogeyman like feature because if a woman really did shatter the Roman, forces in Britain, she has to be a big bitch.
Well, as you said, you know, women were had more rights during that time and it was more common for women to have leadership roles. I don't really necessarily know like if it was crazy then for like a woman to attack and siege. I feel like if they made her out to be something that she wasn't, like you said, it was boogeyman. But I don't think there was emphasis, or if we're correct on her being a woman, it was just this is the monster. You know what I mean? It's not like this is the monster that's also a woman.
Right. And she probably lived in a settlement called a Opida. Um, these were far different from planned towns in the Roman style, but like Calamindium, which is modern day Colchester, for example, had an industry dedicated to the production of copper, glass, silver, and gold. And there was a mint for coinage in the town to facilitate trade with the Roman empires.
If
Um,
anybody listening to this, when Dan said which is modern day what, Dan?
Colchester.
If anyone heard that when Dan said it's modern day Colchester and you went, "Oh, I know exactly where that's at now." Kudos to you. My hat's off to you.
Well, our listener in England probably said, "Oh, I know where that is."
Our listener in England's probably like, "Let me turn on my VPN before I listen to their podcast today so the government doesn't find out." You conspiracy nut. We love you though. Keep listening.
um, so, and these towns, crime, disputes, and punishments were in the hands of the religious leaders, the Druids. They were the law that everyone from Boudicca and Prestugis to the lowest peasant had to abide by their decisions. So these guys were jury, judge, and executioner. Uh, if you had a settlement with somebody or an issue with somebody, you would bring it up in front of the druid, and he would basically either say, "Hey, this person needs to pay this. This person's going to lose a finger," so on and so forth.
Fun fact: in the WWE locker room, uh, that was the Undertaker's role. He was the
Yes.
jury.
Yep.
That's just a little fun fact for you guys out there.
Wrestler's court is what they called it.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, talking about the wrong kind of history. so it was
Now there's where you're wrong. There is no wrong type of history, damn it.
so intertribal warfare was commonplace and it was a major part of Iceni life, and all were expected to defend themselves. Boudica was trained
Look
in
at
the art of warfare, horse riding, and chariot driving by her family members.
look at the white man trying to decide what's right and wrong history again. Tisk tisk.
Johnny, you shut the fuck up.
Now, when you say she was trained in the art of warfare, was that essentially just like going through the army? Like, because I would say like you went through the Marines, so you're trained for warfare.
Well, it was probably, yeah, she probably learned tactics. She probably learned how to use a sword, learned how to use a javelin, stuff like that, like stuff that would prepare her to fight and defend herself.
Okay, okay. But the question is, did she learn how to piss standing up? Ha!
If this whole story is true, I would not be surprised if she pissed standing up.
I've only seen one woman, and when I say piss standing up, I don't. I mean, I know everybody can just spread your legs and piss, whatever. But I've only seen one other woman piss standing up legitimately, and that was my baby sister. I think I was about 6 or 7, and she happened to see me go to the bathroom, and she was just starting to diaper train, and she wanted to go to the bathroom like her brother, and I seen her stand there and pee, and it was the cutest little thing.
Okay, moving on. Uh, Boudica would have conversed with her fellow tribesmen in Brythonic, which has evolved through time into the languages of Breton and Brittany, Welsh and Wales, and Cornish and Cornwall. These are different sects of England.
Are those different languages or are they dialects of English?
They are different dialects, yes.
Okay.
Um, she may also have been aware of the introduction of Latin words to describe the advances of their civilization and tribe, like magister for master, vinum for wine, and templum for temple.
Okay.
So her childhood growing up, she would have remembered the Romans' attempt to disarm her tribesmen in 47 AD under the orders of the new Roman governor Austris Scapula, uh, Scapula, that's probably the right word. Romans were busy attempting to put down the revolt of Cataracus and could not allow any attacks on their vulnerable rear flank by sympathetic British tribes. So basically,
Hey
they
man,
had.
I'm right there with them. I will not allow any attacks on my vulnerable backside either.
Uh,
Sorry, fellas.
so public carrying of arms with the weapons, with the exception of hunting and self-defense, was banned. So carrying laws, they enforced carrying laws in 47 AD.
Fucking liberals coming to take your clubs.
Right. So, this, we're painting a picture of someone who has every right to be upset by the Romans coming in and taking away her way of life. Because even growing up, she probably remembers the Romans coming in and trying to change her tribes and stuff like that. So in Rome, Seneca the Younger was a tutor and advisor to the Roman Emperor Nero, probably a future dive, had lent 40 million sesterces, possibly to Prasutagus, and now he called in the loan in response to the changing situation in Britain.
Man, those are Wilt Chamberlain numbers. Good for him.
Prasutagus had possibly used this money to keep his more opposed to the Roman subjects in line. Now the money had been spent, and Seneca was using the fullest extent of Roman power to regain his monies. So, of course, when it's the worst moment for something bad to happen, it happens, and Prasutagus dies.
Oh no,
So he passes away. That's Boudicca's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what had happened is when he died, any chance of an equal relationship with the Romans ended with him, because in his will, he split his kingdom between his daughters and the Emperor Nero in his will, therefore continuing the previous arrangement with his wife, ruling as client queen of Rome until his daughters were old enough to rule. There is no record whether he consulted Boudicca on this arrangement or not.
So they just went up and did what they want without asking her.
Basically, he left the land to his daughters, not to her. Now, she was going to rule until they became of age, which I don't know how old that is, because in Roman culture, the age of consent was 12.
I'm not touching that. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, and neither should anybody else. However, Roman law didn't recognize the inheritance through the daughters and viewed the whole kingdom as the rightful property of Rome. This agreement had brought the Iceni into the Roman fold as allies, or at least client kings were to be terminated. So
was that Abby that just groaned?
Yes. So the overbearing attitude of the Roman legionnaires to the local population reduced them to resemblance of slaves. With all the confidence of the conqueror over the conquered, they stole their lands, took their crops, and forced their labor. For the veterans settled in Dunium, this was not have been the first time that they were to be subjected to a enemy of Rome, and they threw themselves into the task with glee.
So they just became slaves, and those guys were like, "Cool."
Yeah. So located at Camulodium, there was another source of discontent. A great temple was built to the imperial cult, and the Emperor Claudius was built. Um, Again, two different religions, and they're bringing their religion and they're bringing their people and making statues. The temple to Claudius was a symbol of the Britons' defeat. Worse was to come for Boudicca and her daughters when she brought her demands for justice to the Roman authorities. She so this is the breaking point I talked to earlier. Boudica went to the Roman authorities and had pled her case, said, "This is my land, this is my daughter's land." Um, and the Romans was responded like, good people here, and they proceeded to publicly flog or whip Boudica in front of her tribesmen. And her daughters were repeatedly raped by Roman soldiers.
Yeah, that's it's pretty awful.
Yeah. So again, like I said, this is the breaking point. So not only this happened, members of the Iceni tribe being flogged was probably a pretty common occurrence once the Romans had annexed their lands. But for a member of the royal household to be publicly flogged and her daughters raped was a crime that spread throughout the Iceni and therefore neighboring tribes.
You know what? I'm going to take a perspective from the Romans right now. And I feel like that's one of their mistakes. You know, if you're going to enslave people, you have to kill enough and make an example of enough to significantly weaken the uprising.
See, and that's the thing, because rape was very uh, it was abhorrent to Roman sensibilities as well, because the laws in Rome, if a woman was raped, her rapist would have to have his nose cut off and a third of his possessions given to the person he raped.
That's not a bad that's not a bad I think we should bring that back.
Yeah, I mean, and so they have this ideology about rape that it's a bad thing, but they proceeded to do it to this woman's daughters. And now I don't know how old they were at this time, but everything that I've read and watched indicated that they were probably 8 to 10 years old, 8 to 12.
Okay, that seems about right.
So Roman
With that logic, by the way, just another reason to hate him. Voldemort is a rapist.
uh,
And Pinocchio was probably the safest guy to ever be around.
He was a white knight on the internet.
Are you calling Pinocchio a incel?
If the shoe fits. Uh, Roman response to the "No, I really don't think you're hot. I just want to walk you home." Pinocchio, why is your nose growing? It's not.
He didn't he only started harassing women, and that's how he became a real boy.
Oh, that's actually kind of dark. Roman response to the growing threat was limited due to, again, we talked about the Druid uprising. Roman governor Suetonius Paulinius attempting to end the Druidic inspired resistance in North Wales. Uh, Paulinius had a long and famous history in the Roman army, most famously being the first Roman to cross the Atlas Mountains after he crushed a revolt while in Morocco, which gained him a reputation to rival Corbulo, who had defeated the Persians in Armenia. Romans, once you got into the legions, chances are you were there for life.
It's like being a senator.
Yeah. You had guys who got out, but you see a lot of career soldiers in Roman history. So this guy was appointed governor of Britain in 58 AD. The Romans had a long hatred of the Druids, stretching back from their earliest experiences with the Gauls of modern day France. So they view these pagan Druids, basically. Caesar believed that Druids were originally from Britain and had brought their religion southwards into Gaul. Paulinius' operation against the Druids may have been seen by the Romans as the final step in eradicating the Druidic religion and the menace that they believed it posed to Rome.
So they thought paganism was a threat to Rome.
Right. So when they got to North Wales, Paulinius and his soldiers saw masses of men and women all hysterically to the Druids' commands were in front of them without any fear of the potential death that awaited them. Many refugees fleeing from Paulinius' forces as they advanced towards the town. This wasn't an army, but a mass of unarmed men and women who believed that they were invincible to Roman arms.
Oh,
Paulinius regained his composure and launched his troops at the Druids and their followers, and just slaughtered, absolutely destroyed the entire population. So
yeah, man, they
having
sound like a bunch of crazy people. They didn't think they could get affected. They thought they were impervious. Come on,
right,
what are you doing? You're just inviting slaughter because you're probably get cocky too if you think you're impervious.
um, so having
Fir-
crushed the
First, first person that got stabbed, everybody was like, "Oh shit, the gig is up."
oh, they had to be running, and that first wave to get mowed down, they're like, oh no,
We better run. Maybe we're not as invincible as we thought.
ruh raggy.
Yeah.
Having crushed the resistance and massacred the Druids, Paulinius demolished all signs of the Druids and their religion by building a fort over their sacred places and burning and desecrating, des, yeah, you know what I'm saying, their sacred groves.
Desecrating.
Yes. Mistletoe was especially sacred to the Druids and their rituals. The destructions of the groves must have been part of the cataclysmic shock to the Britons and have been probably played a major part in the brutality and tortured doled out by the Britons as revenge to any captured Roman during Boudicca's revolt. So even though it doesn't seem like much, but this burning of the mistletoe was just another step in the road on the road to revolt against the Romans.
Yeah, they just keep shitting on them and shitting on them.
So it was in this time period that Boudica must have realized that this was the opportune time to strike, sending emissaries to other nearby tribes the, to convene with them. She stood up and impassionately played up their emotions, addressing the member of the tribe. Um, she spoke on how Providence played its part, and now was the time to bring the Romans to account for their brutalities against the Britain. So she fired them up, you know. She got them ready to go after the Romans, you know, like all good motivators throughout history do.
Yeah, General Patton, Winston Churchill, like Adolf Hitler.
Right. That was a good one. Uh, trying to read my notes and not paying attention, but you slipped one in there. Calmillennium. So this was the first town that they attacked. Boudica stood on her chariot outside the Roman settlement that so many of her um, countrymen saw it as a monument to the destruction of their way of life. She could see the temple to Claudius rising high into the sky that so many had been forced to give their money and bodies to build. She tore at her cloak, exposing the lashes to the Romans had given her, pointed her spear at her desecrated pointed her spear at her daughters before launching into venomous triad against the Romans and the town of Camalodunum.
So she pulled a what's that movie called? The Walking Tall in the
Yes.
jury. Ripped open his shirt. These are my scars where they beat me.
Yeah.
These are my daughters that they raped. Will yours be next? Charge!
Well, I mean, her daughters fought in this combat. Her daughters were with her every step of the way.
I mean, I don't mean to sound callous.
It was
But
probably very hard to find a babysitter back then, Johnny.
well, no, on top of that, after you get publicly raped brutally and like they're taking over your land, they're destroying your family's kingdom and all that, what do you have to lose?
Right. So Boudicca had gathered a large force intent on gaining retribution for the treatment of her queen, and possibly more importantly, the desire to plunder the rich town standing in front of them. When the townsfolk had discovered Boudicca's troops marching towards them in a revolt, they desperately sent for help from their procurator, Catus Decius. Roman legions would, in their eyes, likely scare the Britons away or defeat them in pitched battle. However, Catus, in either arrogance or lack of understanding, only sent 200 poorly armed men to defend the town.
I'm going to jump out on a limb and say arrogance.
Can I get mercilessly slaughtered for 300?
Woo!
It isn't, yeah, again, we always talk about this whenever it comes up. But underestimating your opponent has led to so many defeats in history, throughout history, from beginning to even now. You know, if you underestimate your opponent, then you're going to make bullshit decisions like only sending 200 poorly armed troops. Like, if they would have sent a legion to this town, the revolt would have been done here.
Dan, what was the guy you said recently just finished listening to Operation Paperclip?
Mark.
Hey, Mark, when you finally get around to listen to this episode, I just want you to know Nazis are fucking bad, dude.
Oh, so it isn't recorded what Boudicca thought of the tiny force sent to defend the Colonia, but they were quickly dispatched by the Britons as they advanced. And it was also likely that before this attack happened, she probably already sent messengers to the anti-Romans that lived in this town. Either, hey, join us, or you need to get the fuck out of there.
You know, the more I listen to this story and the more I learn about this woman, and I know this might shock you, Dan, but I'm starting to not like her.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, so far she has not won me over. Hate to be this guy, but I kind of feel like Trump on this one.
Okay.
I like my war heroes not captured or not defeated. Like this lady,
Well,
like we're telling this story, but it's all for naught.
Yes, but this isn't a story about complete victory. This is a story about even though she was eventually defeated, she stood up to the evil Roman Empire and said, "You can't take my land, and you definitely can't take my daughters or rape my daughters."
But that's the thing. They did. And this to me is more a story of Batman because the lady is more of a symbol than anything. And we don't even know if she's real.
100%. That's what she's became throughout history. And she's an example of standing up to your oppressors. And that's what this
But
story
it's a horrible example.
Yeah, but she also inflicted considerable damage on the Roman Empire and made them scramble. She made them second guess.
I mean, I get that the Japanese fucked us up in Pearl Harbor, but we know how that ended.
Yes, USA, USA. Plus, not to mention, she is a very strong female member of history. You know, a lot of them aren't fully remembered. So we only have a few tales to tell. So why not tell them?
I mean, I'm not saying don't tell it. I just, I don't know. It's weird because it's going to come off wrong, but like stories of strong women don't necessarily impress me because I was raised by strong women. I've seen strong women my entire life. It's not like this is a shocking thing. I get it. It's a story that needs to be told. It's out there. I'm just, I get so disappointed because I don't know. Let's go.
I don't know if I want to go anymore.
She's fucking Batman John McCain. We don't even know if she's real, and she didn't become successful.
Fuck John McCain.
Wow, that was rough stuff.
What, man? He voted continuously to keep us in war. He was one of the most adamant people to go to war with, like Iran or Saudi Arabia, like that. He ran off of war money. Yes, he was a prisoner of war, and he could be commended to that. But a lot of his reports of him being a POW are often disputed in terms of like what he did and how he behaved. So anyway,
I dig it.
The Romans failed to even build any defensive against the Britons. So, they underestimated their opponent. They just figured that these guys were never going to, have to defend the town against these tribes people. They're barbarians. Who cares? What are they going to do?
I would say this is the last interruption, but we know that's not true. But it's like, hey, today, folks, on What in the History, we're going to talk about a fucking loser. You want to know who else came in second place? Exactly.
It's like, so hey, if you want to become a co-host of a history podcast, please email me at whatinthehistory814@gmail.com or find me, Daniel Brady, on Facebook. Just DM me, dbcomedy814. I appreciate you. So they didn't have defenses. They barely had soldiers. Camulodium fell in an orgy of violence as the Britons poured out of their anger on any of the Roman colonists they could find. If they believed you were part of the Romans, you suffered. The outer parts of the settlement were burned as they pillaged the town. The remaining Romans and locals fled to the great temple of Claudius to seek shelter under the protection of the defied emperor. They held out for 2 days behind their barricades under worsening conditions before the fury of the Britons overwhelmed them, leading to a massacre of all within the destruction of the temple, along with the instruments of Roman worship.
So they just destroyed the church, said, boom, gone.
They killed everybody. Women, children, men, they didn't care. Anybody that was in that chamber room died.
I like it because, I think that's a lot of mistakes people make is they let the women and children go when they can be just as dangerous. If you're gonna enslave a people or if you're gonna take over people, put your foot on their fucking neck and don't let up till everybody can't breathe.
Or I prefer the Cyrus attempt and just let them do whatever.
See, I mean that's cool and that works through history, but me, I'm a bloodthirsty emperor.
So the Celts took the bronze bust of Claudius. You remember the statue I talked about yes. From the temple and decapitated it. You're going to find this fascinating. They took it and in a show of defiance to the Roman god, threw the head into the river in Suffolk, where it was found by a young boy over 1,800 years later in 1907.
Actually, that's pretty fucking cool.
So we know this happened because of stuff like this. So the Romans responded by sending the 9th Legion under Petilius Ceralis to put down the revolt. The Britons had eyes and ears everywhere and managed to lure the legion into a trap. The result was a massacre of the Roman forces. Their infantry was destroyed and only those on horseback managed to flee.
Every name you say either sounds like a sexually transmitted disease or the medicine you get prescribed for a sexually transmitted disease.
It's the Romans, man. They fucked everybody.
This is chlamydius. This is gonorrheus. This is Emperor Penicillinus.
This is Claudius Anus.
Yeah. He's a cloudy anus.
So they trapped these guys and I couldn't find a whole lot of details on this, but they massacred an entire legion. which is close to 5,000 men, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, and the barbarians weren't great warriors. They usually had no armor, uh, basically weapons that a common man would have. They didn't have any formal training or tactics.
Whoop
So
whoop whoop.
that
Dan, 6,000.
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I knew I was right around there. Um,
You know
so
what?
the
I'm wrong. It's 3,000 to 6,000. So you were correct.
Okay, awesome. Middleman, I like it. Um, so they had to use ambush tactics and guerrilla warfare in order to defeat the Romans.
They were like the Viet Cong.
So, yeah, or like us during the Revolutionary War in the War of 1812. USA, USA.
USA.
Here in the rout of the Ninth Legion and the massacre at Camalodunum, uh, Catus, fearing his life, was in danger, and to explain a situation of his own doing, he fled over the sea to Gaul and resolved to bring the disastrous news to Rome and Nero himself. So this guy fled the country with the excuse of, "Oh, I got to tell Big Daddy Emperor."
Right on. You know, if I ever flee due to fear of violence, I don't care what people talk shit about if I'm still alive.
Right.
You know, they'll be like, "Oh, John's a pussy. He left such and such because they were going to kill him." Yeah, but he's still alive, you fucking moron. Not you, Dan, but his shit talkers. Or whoever's talking shit on me leaving so I don't die, which, if you know me, that's not indicative of my nature. I'll die before I go somewhere. I'll die before I run.
Yeah, man, you ain't running from Chris Cutler.
Again, another name that I will not even acknowledge.
What name were you talking about? I didn't say a name. So Paulinius forced marched his men back from Anglesey as quickly as possible, but reports quickly reached him with the horrific news that it was too late for Camalodunum, and furthermore, he knew it would be too late to set up a defense on uh, Londinium as well. He may have felt he was unable to defend such an expansive position with the limited forces at his disposal. Ignoring the desperate pleas of the inhabitants, he gave the order to retreat and gather reinforcements from Roman outposts around the land. He also ordered the evacuation of Londinium of all those fit to escape the Britons. Those that were unable or unwilling were shit out of luck.
You know, I would drop my entire life, change everything about my life if Michelle Obama wanted to get married to me right now.
Okay.
Yeah, just letting you in on my world, you know?
I don't think I want to be in your world that much.
Melania? No. I'm telling that bitch, look, get out of here. You're used goods. Get the fuck away from me. Michelle? Hey, baby, where do I sign?
Oh, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. The destruction of London can still be found in excavations, bringing up burnt pottery, building and furniture. The buildings in Londinium were extremely flammable, being made of wood and daub, which was woven twigs covered in clay. And the city
You know, Dan,
would have.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. And I think you knew that was coming. I'm tired of pretending like people's credentials fucking matter for president anymore, ever again. So I don't give a fuck. People are pieces of shit. All the presidents are gonna fuck me. I want someone fun to run. I want like Danny DeVito to run for president. What's his qualifications? It doesn't fucking matter.
Where the fuck did that come from?
Man, politics are everywhere. They're driving me crazy. People are like, "Oh, this person's not qualified." Nobody's fucking qualified to rule over other people.
Uh, so the city would have gone up with flames, in flames with ease. Those that weren't engulfed in the flames were slaughtered by the enraged Britons and all manners of torture. They had no desire to take prisoners, only to remove all presence of the Romans from their lands in unrepentant vengeance. The town was thoroughly looted and destroyed by the Britons. Archaeologists speak of a Boudiccan destruction horizon from the burnt daub. As the daub is heated, it becomes akin to pottery, giving it a chance to survive for modern archaeologists to discover. So basically, like they can dig it into the ground, and you'll just see this layer of burnt clay, and it's like, oh, that was the that's when the Britons burned down London.
That's a pretty cool way of dating. From what I understand, there was a thing where they can do like a 3D rendering of underground, and they found a whole city recently. It's on sacred land. That's why it hasn't been dug up and it's not
Yeah,
allowed by the government. But they found a whole fucking city.
that's fascinating. Uh, so Verolinium, I'm gonna mess that up. Was next to fall to the ever-growing British forces. So this was all boom, 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 boom. Uh, she acted quick. Her men acted quick, and they just had this trail of just death following them all the way down from northern uh, Britain. The
So this
Celts,
was just happening instantly, and people didn't realize it was happening before they realized it.
yes, and again,
So it was almost like boom, the first tower, the second tower, the Pentagon, some field in in Pennsylvania.
but it was probably over a course of a month because they still had to walk. But you also got to remember too, and I know it's kind of hacky to bring this up every old time episode, but they didn't have cell phones. They probably barely had messengers, you know. So
Where's the
like,
images of the Pentagon crash? Is all I'm asking.
so the
This is
self,
what happens. You gave me all day to think about this, and it took me 5 minutes to be like, all right, fuck this lady, and then I just started thinking about other crazy shit.
I mean, saying "fuck this lady" is so great for a podcast episode. Uh, really,
Man,
really
they,
adds to our credibility of
they come for
history
they come for
podcasters.
the info. They come for the entertainment. They don't come for our opinions on the people.
So the Celts pillaged and tortured the defenseless people of Verulamium. Many were sacrificed to the British god of victory, Andrast. This may have been done in revenge for the despoiling of the sacred groves and slaughtering of the Druids at Mona.
Let me stop you for a second. You said British God.
Yes. Well, you got to remember these people were tribesmen and they had completely different gods.
Do we know anywhere close to what type of gods? Like if it was like oh, they're almost like Greek gods, or it's almost like Viking gods or Norse gods or what have you. Do we have any type of understanding of them?
It'd probably be closer to Vikings because again, these guys were passed off as druidic religions. So I believe the general religion was of the Druids. And
Another question, Dan.
Yes.
Is Druid a type of character or character skill in like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that?
I believe so, yes.
You know what they do? Are they healers or?
I've never played
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a nerd, but I'm not that kind of nerd.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man.
Because nobody ever asked me. Boudicca's reaction to the massacre isn't noted by the Roman authors, but it could be inferred that once they had happened at Camalodium, she would have realized that the Romans would be extremely reluctant to ever negotiate her claims and grievances. The subsequent massacres that occurred may have been out of her control as the build of the Britons from various tribes began to see potential for looting and plundering the Roman settlements. However, it is likely that she would have shown no remorse to the Romans that had flogged her, raped her daughters, and probably took part in the massacres that took place. She seemingly had no qualms either about the massacres of women and their tortures that was meted out by her forces. Perhaps she saw them as retaliation for her daughters and the treatment she endured herself.
I think they're thinking into it too much because, like, I don't know, man. If a people are at war with your people, then why? And they raped your daughters. They publicly beat you. They took everything from you, essentially. Why would they have? Why would she have any issue with, her enemies being hurt?
Yeah, it's also again because this whole thing, like I said before, uh, a lot of this could have been exaggerated, but there's no notes of her like laughing maniacally as the town of London burns, or stuff
Yeah.
like that. So it's not really fully known her reactions, but I'm gonna guess because hell hath no fury like a woman's cord. She probably slaughtered her fair share of people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure. Did you say she was a trained archer?
I no, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I wonder
Uh,
if she had any archery training because I imagine that would come into play.
I am not sure if that technology was available at this time.
Okay.
The numbers of Romans dead compared to one of the worst defeats in Roman history, the Asiatic Vespers of 88 BC, during the in which 80,000 Romans were systematically slaughtered by invading Pontus forces.
It sounds like a Kid Cudi mixtape.
Day and night.
Asiatic Vespers.
uh, Suetonius and Boudicca's forces were both marching on the Waitland Road and taking position with the road in front of them and the wilds of Britain behind them. Suetonius planned to put down a revolt by goading the Britons into conflict. Um, he knew that his Romans could beat them in an all-out battle, a straight up sword for sword. The Romans would put them down. For Boudicca, the Roman force in front of her was the last obstacle to throwing the Romans back across the sea that they had come from. With her massive numerical superiority and recent victories, her confidence probably couldn't have been greater. And as the face, fate of Britain rested on the coming hours.
Let me stop you, Dan. You said her numerical superiority. Is that just mean she had more troops?
Depending on the account, it was either 10-1 or 23-1.
Holy shit. So either way.
Yeah. So it is highly, again, we talked about this big speech. Both Boudicca and Paulinius supposedly gave speeches. I'm not going to go over them, and Johnny's not going to go over them because, one, nobody lived to tell Boudicca's speech. There's no way that a Roman historian 100 years later knew exactly what she said. Yes, she probably did encourage her troops, but it probably wasn't as long-winded because when she was giving the speech, you could see the Roman army marching against her.
Dan, have you ever played the game Telephone?
Yes.
Where you whisper into someone's ear and so forth. And
yeah.
then it changes and people change it. So imagine if one word can't make it to a 30-person room, how far a speech from a lady 100 years ago is going to go to a
right.
historian.
And also for Paulinius too, there was like three different witness accounts for the different speeches he gave. So it's like, yeah, they gave speeches, but we don't know what they said. There was nobody there with the microphone recording them. It wasn't like Paulinius is going to be a guest on a podcast anytime soon. We don't actually know what was said. We know whereabouts it was said at or what time it was because they were about to fight. So this is just basically a tale of two leaders getting their men ready to do the worst.
Now is the time. We must never acquiesce.
Right. So it was said that Boudicca studied the Roman forces, that they were at the nearest point of the road. She could see the commander in the distance as he was encouraging his troops to fight her overwhelming forces. His soldiers gleaming in the sun, fully armored in contrast to her lightly armored men. It would not be swords and armor that would carry the day, but the heart and desire of the Britons to remove these usurpers of liberty from their lands. Not all had joined her forces. Some did stay loyal to Rome, and other tribes had stayed quiet during a revolt. But with victory here, they would know the Romans could be beaten and driven from their lands. So this was very important.
Okay, that's cool.
Right. So, this if she had won, I mean the whole layout and history of Great Britain would be completely different, probably.
I could see that. It would drastically be changed.
So seeing themselves outnumbered by at least 8-1, Cassius Dio estimated it was 23-1. So who knows? Um, Paulinius knew he had to rely on his powers of motivation and personal authority. The Second Legion under Ponius Postumus had dishonorably refused to aid them in this do or die battle, preferring to save their skins until reinforcements arrived. So you have a complete legion just like, we're good. Um, we'll talk about him again here later. Paulinus probably reminded his soldiers that Britons were in front of them and they had never defeated a true opponent, but only by betrayal or fortuitous circumstances. Basically, the Romans had never lost to the Britons in a straight up fight.
Now, like ever?
At this time period, no, they have never. Boudicca's men defeated the Romans in an ambush, but again, that's not a straight up fight.
Right on. So, did they think it was impossible for them to lose?
Basically, yeah. So the Roman forces of the 14th Legion marched into their positions under Paulinius and readied themselves before the onrushing, undisciplined horde raging towards them. Because when Boudicca finished the speech, she released a hare or a rabbit, and basically their religion, rabbits point the way. Like this is where your destiny goes. So the rabbit ran straight at the Roman army, and right after she got finished with her speech, she basically fucking charged.
Go. I mean, what else is she waiting on, though? What else do you got to wait on?
We're going to discuss that here. Some auxiliaries trembled in the face of the screaming horde. Others made prayers to their gods, and the veterans' javelins rose high in their arms as they prepared to blot the sky in a hail of death, and all would fight to a bloody end.
So battle was enraging.
Yeah. So basically, Watling Street had been in use by the Britons for many years before the coming of the Romans and would have been most likely a well-worn grassy track. It connected the two starting points at Dover and
well-worn grassy track is also how I describe my last girlfriend.
Future continuation of the road would have taken the traveler onto either the island of Mona and the Druids or further up through Cheshire to the north of England and Scotland. The modern day location of the Battle of Watling Street is unfortunately unknown. There have been many possible sites proposed for the battle, including King's Cross Station, which is train station in London. It is highly unlikely that the battle was fought here because Paulinius had withdrawn from the city and didn't return. Potential sites for the battle include Manchester in modern-day Warwickshire and the High Cross in Leicestershire. However, despite the clues and Tacitus's account, definite site hasn't been located for the battle along the Watling Road. This may have also been due to the changing landscape of Britain after almost 2,000 years.
Makes sense.
So Paulinius was a tactician, and he set up on this area of Watling Road and decided this is where battle's going to happen because all along the road, was guarded by woods. He couldn't be attacked. They couldn't encircle him, but it also gave him a very narrow passage that they could only cross through. So he had channeled them directly into his position. And choosing a site encircled with woods and a valley, he couldn't be flanked by the mobility of the British chariots and their massive numbers. There is no doubt about Tacticus's account and the fact that the Britons could have just spread through the forest to bring their numbers to bear. However, the probable lack of discipline in the Briton ranks and a reputation for charging head on may account for passing up this opportunity. So earlier you said, yeah, what else is left? Charge them. If they would have
Yes.
just sent a force up the road and the other two forces to encircle and come behind the Romans, they would have won.
So when they were funneled him in, that's
Yes,
a classic battle tactic, correct?
absolutely.
And since you don't really watch the video while we record, I just dropped a little Easter egg off for the viewers. That's
Oh,
my new
yeah.
nickname, guys, and a little character with it. So,
Oh, and I missed it? That
yep.
is terrible. So I have to rewatch this entire video just to see what you just did.
Yeah, that's the second thing you've missed because I've thrown up a couple notes already.
Awesome.
I figure, they're watching the video. I want to have a special relationship with them. They get all the knowledge from you, all the juiciness from you, and I'm just some lackluster sidekick who's trying to make shitty, corny jokes. Bond with me, folks.
Hey, at least you know your position in life, right?
Absolutely.
So the Romans were known as the greatest fighting force that the world had seen. From the sands of Morocco to the forests of Germany, the Roman legionnaire inspired awe and fear in their enemies. During the reign of Nero, 54 to 68, the army was forced to fight on many fronts. There were wars against the Britons, a long and victorious war against the Persians, and finally against the Jewish revolt. The Roman soldier at this time was in two different compartments: the legionnaire, who was a Roman citizen, and the auxiliaries, who were non citizens. The army was further divided into the fleets and the navies, and the Praetorian guards, who were stationed in Rome as the emperor bodyguards. Uh, there was likely to have been around 10,000 men at Paulinius's command, with perhaps some extra men from the garrison that he had passed by. The soldiers were armed with a javelin for throwing into the massive ranks of enemies, a gladius short sword for engaging the enemy in close quarters combat, with a scutum shield in the other arm. Finally, in desperate situations, he would use his dagger to attempt to uh, get himself away from his enemy.
You know what I'm going to ask already.
What?
What's a scutum shield?
It's a little here. It's a big towering shield that they used.
I just realized that most of the words I write on paper, when I put it up to the camera, they come out as backwards. So I hope you guys can read backwards for that little note too.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And so these were very well prepared. The Romans were like how we talk about the British,
Okay.
how the British were a very unbeatable army at certain times, even though throughout history they were defeated, but they were very tough. Like when the Revolutionary War occurred, these guys were lifelong soldiers. They had trained their entire lives. They were disciplined. They were a well-oiled machine, and nothing could beat them.
And this was a harder life. There wasn't any convenience. So not only were they trained, they were already their bodies were already more muscular than ours, because just simple life, you had to work harder.
Right. And these guys would be like stationed in Roman and various other parts. So it's not like these guys grew up explicitly in Rome.
Are you telling me they were like Jersey Shore cast members? They would just claim an Italian?
Well, like these guys would go and then basically would be born in Rome or one of the other territories that Rome laid claim to, and then they would just go off and fight and be in Britain for however long.
Until the fight was over, or until they died, or whatever happened first.
Right, until they got out of the military. I can't tell you how long contracts were at that point.
Yeah, I dig it, Dan. There's some stuff I know that's just lost to history. Little details like that.
If you check your messenger, you'll see a picture of the shield.
If I check my messenger, I will see a picture of the shield.
Boy, that sounded very sexy. Hi, I'm Dan Pretty, and
We-
welcome to the Midnight Whispers.
We definitely have different interpretations of what sexy is.
Yeah, man. So they're, like I said, these guys were well armed, and they were under a very disciplined and very tactically sound-minded leadership. Essentially, it didn't matter how many Britons were there that day. The way it was set up, the way it played out, this was always the outcome. The British army that had marched with Boudicca was made up of men who had seen intertribal conflict their whole lives, and their baggage trained to their families, wives, and children. The train had become larger and larger with every pillage and every sack that Boudicca's forces had committed. What may have begun with the Iceni and the Travantes tribe had snowballed into a rabble of men, women, and children from different tribes of Britain. Tacitus hints as much in his description of the Britons' aims of loot and plunder over a concerted attempt to push the Romans out of Britain militarily by taking their defensive positions.
Unrelated to the specific topic at hand, but relating to the episode, it just struck me. I should check my privilege and apologize to the folks, because even though I was fortunate enough to have strong female role models, not everybody was, and we need to spotlight strong females. My apologies, everyone.
All aboard the woke train.
Bro, I never fucking sleep.
There could be no doubt about the ferocity of the British warriors. The Romans believed they were war mad, as war was what they lived and built for.
Now, is that anything like a berserker rage, war mad?
Well, like these guys' entire life, the barbarians, the Britons, their entire life was fighting. So they kind of enjoyed it a little bit, I'm guessing.
Okay. So they were about the battle.
Now, their infantry, in contrast to the Roman soldier, wore little or no armor on their person. This had led and would lead to mass casualties even before they reached the Roman ranks from the hail of javelins thrown by the Roman preliminary defense. They were covered with bright woad. All Britons dye themselves with woad. It produces a blue color, and as a result, their appearance in battle is all the more daunting. They wear their hair long and shaved all their bodies with the exception of their heads and upper lip. This sort of behavior was showcased by Mel Gibson's William Wallace in Braveheart in 1997.
Never seen the movie, but the way these people are described, it sounded badass until they just left the mustache.
Well, they had beards and stuff. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the way you made it sound, they shaved everything but their head and their upper lip. I just thought they were like Avatar Ned Flanders. We're going to war diddly ora today.
Okie diddly okie, just stab that man with your sword.
Yeah.
Due to the Romans' disarming of the tribes in 47 AD, the British soldiers' armament would have varied greatly. Those that managed to hide their weapons from the Romans of the British aristocracy may have had swords, but the vast majority are likely to have been armed with farming implements or weapons looted from the Romans.
So they just had whatever they had.
Right.
Okay. Which isn't what you're looking for when you're going up an extremely well trained and well armed force.
And due to Paulinius's tactical mindset, he cut off one of the greatest tools that the British had, their chariots. They would ride around in these things and fire off javelins. The Iceni had a reputation as horse breeders, um, so a lot of them fought with these chariots, and they're very strong horses and very quick. But because he set up with a force on both sides, they couldn't use their chariots.
That has to be a hell of a disadvantage.
So they were unable to bring their effectiveness to bear, as the massive British infantry would be packed again into a narrow file and taking up any potential room for the chariots to flank the Romans.
Okay. Okay.
So Boudicca's tactics were simple. She ordered them to attack en masse in frontal assault on the British positions. The Britons, encouraged by their previous victories, their superior numbers, and their families urging them on, the British families had gathered with the wagons, plunder, and livestock to watch the battle unfold just behind the battle lines. So they brought, again, this whole the march of the Britons. They had their families and stuff with them. So Ma and your daughter are about to watch you get completely slaughtered.
Yeah, that's a hell. I've never heard of them like a force taking their whole family with them. That's got to be unique.
So charging towards the narrow Roman position, the Britons were met with a hail of javelins, mowing down the advancing front line of Britons. As the next line attempted to cross the bodies of their former comrades, the legionnaires fired their missiles until they ran out. Roman soldiers held only 2 javelins, leaving many dead with little Roman loss. The Romans then began to advance in the standard Roman formation that had been used successfully in the past against their enemies. As the Britons were stumbling over their dead and dying, Paulinius sent in the cavalry. The horses. He sent the horses in, crashing into the Britons' flank.
I love it.
This was a shocking turn of events to Boudicca, who had likely expected an easy victory after their defeats of the Ninth Legion and the sacking of the Roman towns. Without the discipline and organization of the Roman troops, any of her command would be lost in the midst of battle. There could be no doubting of the courage of her men, but the battle was decisively turning in the Romans' favor.
Dan, I have a question.
Yeah.
A battle like this.
Yes.
What size is the, I guess, battlefield? How much land are they fighting on across? Is it a football field? Is it, 10 acres?
See, we don't know because nobody's actually found the battle site.
Oh, okay.
It was described as a narrow column, so I'm going to guess that this battlefield or where they were at was probably less than 100 yards wide.
That's awfully small.
And you have, up to 80,000 troops charging in one position. Like, that's going to lead to a lot of chaos and just basically, a lot of confusion. And it didn't work out very well. You always have these moments throughout history where the underdog wins, the good guy wins. But this is not the case, man. They were just wholesale slaughtered. It's like Stone Cold Steve Austin was there and opened a can of whoop ass. You know what I'm saying?
And then walked it dry?
Yeah.
Would you say the underdog coming out on top would be like a co-host that's a shitty co-host, doesn't provide a lot of information, but taught himself how to write backwards over the course of a podcast?
Yeah, something like that.
Then you're going to be in for a shock when you watch this video, motherfucker.
Just to spite you, I'm not going to rewatch it.
You're missing gold, Dan.
Soon as some began to retreat, the British lines collapsed, but were hemmed in by their own civilians who, as noted, were watching the battle in a formation around the battlefield. It quickly became a crushing mass of bodies retreating backwards over the dead and dying as Roman troops pushed and pressed them backwards towards the wagons. So the massacre continued as the Romans fell on the women, children, and elderly and the livestock of Britain without mercy. Death counts for the Britons were horrendous. Tacitus puts it at 80,000 men, women, and children, with only 400 deaths on the Roman side.
Wow, only 400.
These numbers on the British side are probably an exaggeration, as many ancient reports are often exaggerated the amount killed by their victories' armies as victorious propaganda for their readers. There can be no doubt that the loss of life on the British tribes far exceeded the Romans and led to widespread famine across their lands due to a lack of manpower for agriculture in the resulting years. So they lost so many men that day that the economy collapsed because these guys couldn't work farmlands.
The economy collapsed. That's devastating.
Well, was it the Cranmore episode that you were asking about what the outcome of like the lost amount of loss of life and how it affected the countries?
It may have been.
It was. That's what I'm telling you. I worded
Oh.
that wrong, but because that's the last war episode we did.
I feel like you set yourself up with a question to smack me out of the park. You're
Yeah.
like, hey, Johnny, is this when you did this? I'm like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, it is. I'm fucking telling you it is.
But so they lost so many guys that they're a very farming people. Like that's how they survived, was farming. And all of a sudden they couldn't manage their farmlands.
About what time period was this again? Because agriculture was huge.
60, 61 AD.
Okay.
And you also got to remember, because the children of these guys were there too. So it's not like little Timmy could help out too. He got wholesale slaughtered by the Romans as well.
So even if they would have been left alone by the Romans, they still would have fallen because there was no one to take care of what they had.
Yeah.
No one to toil at the land and all that jazz.
So yeah. So Boudicca's revolt ended in utter destruction. There's no way for the Britons to militarily recover again as the survivors fled back to their homelands to await the expected violent Roman response. Now, having heard of the Roman victory at Waitling Street, the commander of the Second Augustus Legion, Ponius Postumus, remember this is the guy who refused to show up, knew that his caution would be seen as cowardice in Rome. He may have believed that not in joining the battle, he was protecting the western defenses, the Roman Britain. However, this would never be accepted by Paulinius or Nero. So, in the manner of Brutus and Mark Antony before him, he drew his sword and committed suicide in shame.
Seppuku.
Yep.
Huh. So was, and maybe I'm thinking of the wrong person. You know what? I'm not even going to say it because I probably am.
Okay. Boudicca's defeat spelled the end for the British revolt. The only options left to her and her daughters were to surrender to Rome, begin a guerrilla warfare in the manner of Caractacus, or commit suicide. The sources all agreed that she survived the battle. Looking back on the bloody battlefield filled with the dead men and women not far behind her, knowing she would be pursued like Caractacus was before until the end of her days by the Romans. So basically, there's a couple different stories here. Either she took poison and she died. There's another story that says she took poison herself and gave it to her two daughters in the manner of Cleopatra before she took her poison, informing her surviving bodyguards that she was ill from fatigue. She would retire and die. There are other reports where
that describes most older Americans these days. They just retire and die.
And there's another report where she fell very ill after this battle and she died that way.
Could she have potentially died of like exhaustion or heat stroke?
Yeah.
Or...
All of that is possibilities. All of it.
Aneurysm, even, stress from battle. I
Yeah.
imagine it does a lot to people.
I mean, you also gotta, if even if it wasn't 80,000, a lot of people died essentially because of her. You know,
Yeah.
so that's a massive weight to have.
So are you looking at her in a bit of a different light then now?
What do you mean?
Because now she's not, before this battle happened, she was a symbol of hope, symbol of strength. But now that it's over and she was unsuccessful, she's responsible essentially for, like you said, the death of 80,000 people.
She's still a symbol, but I believe that she probably felt this loss very deeply. All those women and children, everybody was there because she had the idea to revolt against the Romans. So I personally believe that she probably poisoned herself and poisoned her daughters.
I find it fascinating that she made it out of the battle,
Yeah.
because she would have been a trophy.
Oh, exactly.
That's crazy to me. And then I don't, yeah, you would think, she would have a target on her back.
So so again, because of this loss of life, Britain was basically in a famine after this. Um, so Paulinius, having crushed Boudicca's revolt, turned to destroying any embers of resistance to Roman rule. He burned towns and villages and built fortifications and towers as he went through their lands. His path to destruction may have been to appease Nero, who, despite victory, may have been vengeful uh, against all of them because he almost lost to a woman.
Dan, I'm actually, the story has led me down a path because the Romans destroyed Britain. But we know, later in history, don't feel bad for Britain. They were some of the most successful colonizers that there were. Now I'm very curious as to the points between those two. How did they rebuild themselves? How did they become the power that they did?
His Roman took control of Britain, and essentially, they brought people over, and the tribes grew, and they basically broke the tribes down into being members of Roman society. So everything grew from that, and then they were one of the oldest settled, uh, you know, places at this time. So just over the years, they grew into a monarchy. They grew into a warring people.
That's what I wonder. Like, how do you go from that to growing into a monarchy? And then this just tells me Queen Elizabeth is a Guidette.
What?
Queen Elizabeth is a Guidette.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. If that's what happened, if the Romans came over and said, "Okay, we're taking over. This is what we do. Now we're going to form a monarchy." A long story short, she's a Guidette.
So so here to your point, or your question, Tacitus describes in his histories how the Romans began to encourage the Britons with the idea of civilization under successive Roman governors. Soon, Britons began to renounce their old ways and learned Roman customs and languages, further integrating into Roman society. However, it has to be noted that this was not seen as being for the benefit um, of the country, but for the benefit of Rome and her empire.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No question.
While much of Britain fell in line with the Romans, the north and west of the country took many years to subdue. The Picts of the far north of the island, later to become Scotland, never surrendered to the Romans, becoming a thorn in their side for the remainder of their rule. Two walls were built to keep them from raiding and pillaging the south. Firstly, Hadrian's Wall, built on the orders of the Emperor Hadrian, who visited Britain in 122 AD.
And this is to keep the Brits from raiding the South.
Yes, the Picts,
Okay.
Pict, a tribe of people, a warring barbaric tribe. Um, Hadrian's Wall ran from the River Tyne on the North Sea in the east to the Irish Sea on the west. So it ran horizontal. Later in 140 AD, the
You know,
Antonine,
I read about that, and Hadrian used to run into his wall from time to time.
yeah,
It was Hadron's Collider.
I fucking hate you so much.
I love you too, Dan. You see what we did there, folks?
We didn't do nothing. That was fucking terrible.
You're right. I did that on my own. Gold.
The the walls failed to have their own uh, desired effect, and the Picts remained in their own culture and frequently managed to raid Roman Britain throughout their rule. Roman rule came to an end in Britain in 410 AD, and Boudicca became a long lost memory for most. Tacitus' history was lost until the Middle Ages, while Cassius Dio was mostly found far away in the Byzantine Empire. Her revival came with the ascension of Queen Victoria, whose name was said to come from Boudicca. And remember, Boudicca means victory. The Victorians saw the
Isn't that ironic?
of a brave British woman fighting the rightful fight against an oppressor in Rome. The Victorians' writers, while embarrassed by her paganism, brutality, and her defeat, began to eulogize her into common knowledge. Poems by a subject of last week, the Crimean War, Tennyson, who wrote The Charge of the Light Brigade, he wrote several poems. Several ships in the Roman Royal Navy were named after her, and a statue by Thomas Thornycroft named Boudicca and her daughters on a chariot was built in London opposite the Houses of Parliament as the Victorians celebrated her and their monarch. Perhaps the irony of the statue of Boudicca in the same city that she once burned to the ground wouldn't be lost on her, as she was seen as a rightful queen. Her legacy has grown from the ashes that once consumed London on her command to being seen as Britain's first queen fighting for her violated daughters and the oppressed Britons. She is held as being a representative of a great many different people and viewpoints for both good and bad. So,
Wow.
hopefully this podcast have given you an idea of the legend of Boudica. Just want to talk real quick too, is that we don't actually know if Boudica existed. No crypt has ever been found. Nothing that can pinpoint one person to this time period has been found. Again, the battlefield at Waitland Road hasn't been found.
Not for nothing though, Dan. Outside of like kings with like extremely marked graves, can we really confirm anybody's existence from that year?
Yeah, I mean, we can confirm Cyrus the Great existed because he has a
That's what
tomb.
I'm saying. Like when there's a great leader that has a specifically marked tomb, like we can confirm that. But as far as like anybody else, we can't take credit away from this woman just because we can't confirm her. It was a long goddamn time ago.
I'm not taking credit away.
No, not you. Just talking in general.
Yeah, I just want everybody to know that I am not for sure whether or not she was alive.
Yeah, man. I mean, like like the viewers know, I called her redheaded Batman.
Oh, did you?
They know because
Oh,
they
they know.
watch. Because they watch.
Johnny, go fuck yourself. All right.
I probably will before I go to bed. We call that the tucker in. Dan, I'm too fucking quick on my feet for you to be talking shit. Let's go. No, you know what though? In all honesty, I ran my mouth a lot this episode, but this was all new to me. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know anything about the story of Rome invading Britain, and I found it fascinating.
Good.
Yeah, this
So,
was brand new.
So next week, episode 25. You want to know what you're going to be shitting on next week?
Oh man, what am I going to be shitting on?
We are going to be going back into the history of Medal of Honor recipients, and to start off African American History Month, we're going to be covering a man by the name of Sergeant Edward Carter.
I don't know who he is, but I will give him the utmost respect.
He single-handedly destroyed almost a full platoon of Germans after being shot 6 or 7 times. And then again, after being wounded, he marched 3 of the Germans back. And because he knew German the entire time, he got them information. So when he passed off the prisoners, he's like, hey, they're here, they're here, they're here, they're here. I need to go to the hospital.
I know you hear this almost every episode, but I'm actually really excited for this one.
We're gonna also not just talk about Sergeant Carter, but we're gonna talk about um, how a lot of African American were passed over for the Medal of Honor during World War II. Um, they reinvestigated during the Bill Clinton presidency. They reinvestigated 7 different cases of moments of valor for African Americans during World War II. Mm. And not only did they look at those 7s, but they also looked into World War I, and then even as far back as the Civil War.
Give me this guy's full name again.
Edward Carter.
With his rank?
Sergeant, First Class Carter.
Sergeant?
SFC Edward Carter, Medal of Honor.
I am very excited to finally be able to discuss a Carter worth mentioning.
Wow.
Shots fired, motherfuckers. I love you, Carter.
I don't know why you're apologizing to him, because chances are he's never going to fucking hear this.
Oh, I told him I loved him. I didn't apologize for shit.
Following an insult with telling someone you love them is basically apologizing.
Well, then, I mean, I'm not going to take back the love. I don't know. You checkmate, Dan, you win, because I'm not going to take back the love. I mean that.
Got you now.
Yeah, you did.
So that's coming. And not fully sure on the rest of February yet, but definitely stay tuned. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on our Facebook page at What in the History Pod. We're also on Instagram. And yeah, Johnny, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Really hope everybody enjoyed this episode. This is going to be a new format we're doing. We're not going to be releasing all 4 parts at once. We are either going to do episodes as one and done, or we're going to do them in multiple parts over weeks, because I feel like that gives us the ability to be more detailed and get you more information in each episode.
Yeah, we don't have to rush through. We don't have to wrap it up. We don't have to feel pressured. We're trying to put out the best possible content we can for you guys. And thank you for listening on this journey. We're steadily trying to grow. Tell your friends about us. Give us a like, share, subscribe. It's free, and it really helps us out, guys.
Yeah, and as my wonderful co-host always says, peace and love, everybody.
War and hate.
War and hate.